What if I told you that the entire Lakers offseason just got flipped upside down because of one player's decision that nobody saw coming? Not LeBron. Not AD. Not even the front office. Jonathan Kuminga, a 22-year-old kid from the Democratic Republic of Congo, just made a power move that could reshape the entire Western Conference. And right now, as you're watching this, the Lakers are sitting in a room somewhere trying to figure out if they can actually pull this off. Because here's the thing. Kuminga was supposed to be untouchable in Golden State. He was supposed to be the next face of the Warriors franchise. The guy Steph Curry was going to hand the keys to. The guy they were going to build around when the dynasty officially ended. And then something happened. Something broke. And now Kuminga is willing to take less money. Less than the max, less than what Golden State offered him, just to get out. Just to find a new home. Just to finally be somewhere that actually wants him. And the Lakers? They're watching this unfold in real time, and they are absolutely salivating. But here's where it gets complicated. Here's where it gets really interesting. The Lakers aren't the only team at the table anymore. There are other franchises circling. Other front offices making calls. Other coaches who see exactly what Kuminga could be and want a piece of it. And the clock is ticking. So by the end of this video, you're going to understand exactly what happened with Kuminga and Golden State, why he's willing to walk away from millions of dollars, what the Lakers are actually offering, who else is in the running, and whether this deal actually gets done. Let's go back to where this whole thing started. Chapter 1. The boy from Congo. You have to understand who Jonathan Kuminga is before you can understand why this moment matters so much. He didn't grow up in the United States. He didn't grow up playing AAU basketball with travel teams and private coaches and all the machinery that turns American kids into NBA prospects. He grew up in Cabinda, Angola, a small territory connected to the Democratic Republic of Congo, and he fell in love with basketball the way a lot of kids in Africa fell in love with it. Through grainy YouTube videos. Through stories about guys who looked like him playing in arenas that seemed like another world. His family moved around a lot. He ended up in Rwanda, then Uganda. Then he caught the eye of some scouts who couldn't believe what they were seeing in this teenager who was already 6'7" with a body like he'd been carved out of granite and footwork that made no sense for someone his size. He came to the United States as a teenager, went through the NBA Academy Africa program, and eventually landed at NBA G League Ignite, the pathway for elite prospects who skip college and go directly into a professional development pipeline. And Kuminga was not just good there. He was terrifying. The athleticism, the size, the way he moved in space, the way he could guard 4 positions, the way he could take a smaller defender into the post and just bully them, the way he could catch a lob in traffic and finish above the rim with defenders draped all over him. The Warriors saw all of this and thought they were stealing something. In the 2021 NBA Draft, Golden State took Jonathan Kuminga with the 7th overall pick. 7. They took him 7th, which tells you everything you need to know about how much they valued him. This wasn't a late first-round flyer. This wasn't a project. This was a franchise investment. This was Golden State saying, we see this kid's ceiling and we are betting on it. And for a little while, it seemed like it was all going to work out perfectly. Chapter 2. Promise and Frustration. Kuminga's first 2 seasons in Golden State were exactly what you'd expect from a young player learning a curse system that's sophisticated enough to confuse people who've been in the league for 10 years. He was raw. He made mistakes. He played in fits and starts. But every now and then, every few games, he would do something that made the entire arena go silent for half a second before they erupted. A putback dunk that seemed to defy physics. A drive to the basket where he ran through 2 defenders like they weren't there. A defensive sequence where he switched onto a guard, a forward, and a center in the same possession and handled all 3 of them. People inside the organization were buzzing. Then came the 2022-23 season. Kuminga started to get more opportunities. He started to look like the player they'd drafted. He was averaging real minutes, contributing in real moments, and people inside the league were starting to talk about him differently. And then the 2023-24 season happened. That was the season where everything accelerated. Kuminga averaged over 16 points per game. He was efficient. He was assertive. He was playing with a confidence that hadn't been there before. He looked like a guy who had figured something out, who had crossed some threshold that young NBA players cross when they stop surviving and start competing. The Warriors were publicly raving about him. Steph was talking about him like a little brother. Draymond was talking about the future of the franchise. And then, contract time. Chapter 3. The number that broke everything. Here's the thing about NBA contracts. They're not just money. They're not just numbers on a page. They are a statement. They are an organization telling a player exactly what they think of him, exactly how much they value him, exactly where he fits in their vision of the future. And when the Warriors sat down with Jonathan Kuminga's camp to talk about an extension, the number they put on the table told Kuminga something he didn't want to hear. Reports started coming out that Golden State was offering somewhere in the range of a deal that was significantly below what Kuminga and his representatives felt was appropriate for a player of his caliber and trajectory. From the Warriors' perspective, there was a logic to it. They were trying to manage the luxury tax. They had Steph Curry's deal. They had other commitments. They were trying to be financially responsible while also keeping a young player happy. From Kuminga's perspective, they were lowballing him. And more than that, they were telling him something about how they saw his future there. Because if you truly believe in a player, if you truly think he's going to be a cornerstone of your franchise for the next decade, you don't nickel and dime the extension. You don't make him feel like he has to fight for his worth. You pay him. And Golden State wasn't paying him. Not to his satisfaction. The summer of 2024 came and went without a deal getting done. Kuminga played out the year without an extension. And that should have been the loudest alarm bell in the entire organization. But here's where it gets even more complicated. Because during the 2024-25 season, Kuminga dealt with injuries. He missed significant time. And when he was healthy, the situation between him and the organization had this strange tension around it, this unspoken friction that everyone in the building could feel but nobody wanted to address directly. Then the season ended. And now here we are. Chapter 4. The Willing. Let's talk about the phrase that changed everything. Kuminga is willing to take less. Those 5 words. That's the entire news. That's the entire earthquake. Because in the NBA, when you have a young, elite, ascending talent who is 22 years old with that kind of physical profile and that kind of skill set, and he's willing to take less than max money to find a new home, that means one thing and one thing only. He's done. Not in a dramatic, burned bridges, say something crazy at a press conference kind of done. But in a quiet, resolved, I've made my peace with this kind of done. He wants to leave Golden State. And the reason this is such a massive story, the reason the entire league is paying attention, is that Kuminga has every right to demand max money, based on what he showed in that 2023-24 season, based on his age, based on his physical tools, based on the trajectory. He could hold out for the maximum contract. He could make Golden State's life incredibly difficult. He could sit in restricted free agency and dare teams to make offers that the Warriors would either have to match or let him walk. But he's not doing that. He's willing to take something more team-friendly, something that makes it easier for a team like the Lakers, who have their own salary cap challenges, to actually put a realistic package together. And that changes the math completely. Chapter 5. Enter the Lakers. Let's set the scene in Los Angeles. The Lakers are in this interesting, precarious, high-stakes moment in franchise history. LeBron James is still on the roster, or was, depending on when you're watching this. Anthony Davis is still the centerpiece of everything they do defensively. And the front office, led by Rob Pelinka, is trying to figure out how to build something that can actually compete for a championship before the window closes. Because windows close in the NBA. They always do. And the Lakers have been living in this strange in-between place for a couple of years now, good enough to make the playoffs, not quite good enough to seriously threaten for a title. They need a piece. A real piece. A young, dynamic, two-way wing who can guard the opponent's best player, attack the paint, play in a system that demands versatility. And when you describe that player, when you draw that picture in your head, Jonathan Kuminga's face is right there. He fits what the Lakers need almost perfectly. Think about it from a basketball perspective for a second. The Lakers under Darvin Ham, and now with whoever they go with going forward, have always been a team that needs athleticism on the wings. They need guys who can defend in space, who can switch, who can make plays off the bounce when the half-court offense bogs down. Kuminga can do all of that. He can be the guy who guards the opposing team's Jason Tatum or Kevin Durant or Kawhi Leonard. He can be the guy who attacks closeouts and draws fouls and keeps defenses honest. He can be the guy who catches lobs from Anthony Davis passing out of the post. Wait, sorry. Wrong direction. He can be the guy who throws lobs to Anthony Davis. The fit is real. And now the willingness to take less money makes the financial side of it, at least theoretically, workable. So what does a Lakers package actually look like? What can they offer Golden State to make this happen? Chapter 6. The Trade Puzzle. This is where it gets fun. This is where it gets into the actual chess match of NBA transactions. The Lakers can't just call Golden State and say, "We'll take Kuminga, here's some cash." That's not how trades work. They need to send back matching salary. They need to offer assets, draft picks, young players, that make Golden State feel like they're getting something real in return. And here's the challenge. The Lakers don't have an enormous amount of assets to throw around. They've traded picks before. They have some young players on the roster, but not a collection of blue-chip prospects that would make any team drool. So what could they put together? A few scenarios have been floated around in league circles and by the reporters who cover these teams closely. One version involves including a young player from the Lakers roster, someone like Austin Reeves or Rui Hachimura or D'Angelo Russell, depending on what Golden State is looking for, along with whatever draft capital the Lakers can scrape together. Here's the thing about that. Golden State is rebuilding, essentially. They're in transition. They know the Steph Curry window is closing, and they have to think about what comes next. What they want in a Kuminga trade isn't just a warm body. They want something that helps them in the next phase. Draft picks help. Young players with potential help. Whether the Lakers have enough of both to satisfy the Warriors is the entire question. And then there's the salary matching piece, which is its own complicated puzzle. Because the contracts have to add up in a way that's compliant with CBA rules, which means the Lakers might need to include multiple players on shorter deals to make the numbers work. It's like a jigsaw puzzle where every piece matters and you don't have all the pieces yet. But the Lakers are working on it. And here's the thing, they're motivated. They're not casually interested. They are actively engaged in figuring out how to make this happen. Chapter 7. The Competition. But wait. Remember what I said at the very beginning about other teams circling? This is where the story gets its tension. It's real drama. Because the Lakers aren't alone. When word got out that Kuminga was potentially available and that he was willing to be flexible on money, the phones in front offices around the league started lighting up. Let's talk about who's in the mix. The first team you have to mention is the Miami Heat. Pat Riley and the Heat have built their reputation on exactly this kind of move, identifying players who are undervalued or underutilized by their current team, players who have unrealized potential, and bringing them into a system and a culture that unlocks something new in them. Jimmy Butler, Kyle Lowry, Bam Adebayo's development. The Heat have a long history of this. And Kuminga fits the Heat profile perfectly. He's young, he's athletic, he plays with effort on both ends, he can be molded by a demanding coaching staff, and he's entering his prime years. Miami is interested. You can believe that. Then there's the Dallas Mavericks. Dallas has Luka Doncic and Anthony Edwards. Wait, that's not right. They have Luka. And they've been in the market for wings who can play beside him, who can defend and attack and not just stand in the corner. Kuminga would be a fascinating addition alongside Luka because of his ability to play off-ball, to cut, to use his athleticism in space created by the best playmaker in the world. There are other teams too. Teams that haven't been named publicly yet. Teams whose interest is more quiet, more behind the scenes, but no less real. And this is the element that changes the Lakers' calculus. If you're the only team interested in someone, you can take your time. You can negotiate patiently. You can let the deal come to you. But if other teams are in the conversation, if Miami is on the phone with Golden State, if Dallas is putting together a package, if there are dark horse teams nobody's talking about yet, then the Lakers have to move. They can't sit back. They can't play it cool. They have to decide if they're serious, and if they are, they have to let Golden State know right now. Chapter 8. What Golden State really wants. Let's step inside the Warriors front office for a second. Joe Lacob, Mike Dunleavy Jr., the ownership group. They're sitting around a table trying to figure out the most responsible thing to do with a player who is clearly talented, clearly doesn't want to be here anymore, and whose departure is looking increasingly inevitable. Here's the thing about being Golden State in this situation. You have leverage, but it's limited. Leverage. You have leverage because Kuminga is a restricted free agent, which means any offer he gets from another team, you have the right to match it. You can match and keep him. But here's the problem. He doesn't want to stay. And if you match an offer just to keep an unhappy player, what have you actually accomplished? You've spent the money. You've kept the asset. But you've got a guy who is miserable, who doesn't trust the organization, who is going to play with a cloud over him for the entire length of that deal. That's not a good outcome for anybody. So the Warriors' best path, their most financially responsible and basketball-smart path, is probably to find a trade partner before he actually hits free agency as a restricted free agent. Find the best possible return. Get young players and picks back. Start the rebuild properly. But they're not going to give Kuminga away. They're not just going to hand him to the Lakers for nothing and say thanks for your interest. They want value. Real value. And the question is whether the teams at the table, the Lakers, Miami, Dallas, whoever else, can provide enough real value to make Golden State pull the trigger on a deal. Chapter 9. The Kuminga File. Let me give you a proper breakdown of what you're actually acquiring when you acquire Jonathan Kuminga. Because I think sometimes in these trade conversations, people get so caught up in the business side, the contracts, the picks, the salary cap numbers, that they forget to talk about the basketball player himself. So let's talk about the basketball player. At 22 years old, Kuminga is 6'7", about 220 pounds. His wingspan is almost 7 feet. That combination of height, length, and weight gives him an almost unfair advantage in one-on-one situations. He can guard point guards if he needs to. He has the lateral quickness. He can guard power forwards. He has the strength. And he can certainly guard small forwards, which is technically his position. On offense, his most lethal weapon is the drive. He's a downhill attacker who gets to the rim with terrifying efficiency when he's going downhill in space. He draws fouls at a high rate, which is a skill in itself. You have to have the body control to get into defenders and absorb contact and still finish, and Kuminga has developed that. He's also become a more capable shooter than people give him credit for. His three-point percentage has been inconsistent, that's fair, but the mechanics are sound. The release is clean. With the right environment, with the right coaching, with more spacing around him, there's genuine belief that he can become at least a serviceable floor spacer from three, which would make him almost impossible to guard. His defense is where it gets really exciting, because he brings the same athleticism and physicality to that end of the floor. He can switch. He can communicate. He plays with an edge that good defensive teams need. The Warriors actually used him in some late-game defensive assignments against elite scorers, and he didn't embarrass himself. He competed. Now here's the honest part. Here are the areas where he still has room to grow. His decision-making with the ball. There are moments where he's put in a position to make a read, to choose between 3 options on the court, and he hesitates or makes the wrong choice. That's not unusual for a 22-year-old. That's actually pretty normal. But in a high-stakes playoff series, those moments can cost you, and the team that acquires him has to be comfortable accepting that he's still learning. His shooting off the catch from 3 needs more consistency. Right now it's a weapon that works sometimes. You want it to work almost every time. Getting there requires reps and coaching and confidence, all of which can come with the right situation. And his handle under pressure isn't quite at the level where you want to hand him the ball in the 4th quarter of a close game and say figure it out. He's not there yet. Maybe he gets there. Young players often do. But right now that's a limitation. The package, though? The overall package of what Jonathan Kuminga brings to a basketball team at 22. It's extraordinary. It's the kind of stuff you can't coach. The size, the athleticism, the defensive versatility, the attacking ability, the motor, those things are God-given. Those are the things that make scouts lose sleep because they know how rare they are. Chapter 10. The Lakers' history with bold moves. Let me take you back in time for a second. Because context matters here. The Lakers have a history. A long, storied, sometimes glorious and sometimes chaotic history of making aggressive moves to acquire talent. Shaquille O'Neal, Kobe Bryant, Pau Gasol, who was acquired in a trade that people at the time thought was highway robbery for the Lakers. LeBron James coming in free agency. Anthony Davis in that massive trade that cost the Lakers a significant package of young players and picks. The franchise has shown, over and over again, that they're willing to be bold. They're willing to go get the player they want and figure out the collateral damage later. And that history matters now because it means the Lakers know how to operate in this environment. They know how to make a run at a player. They know how to present a vision, a pitch, a reason for someone to choose them. LeBron James chose the Lakers. Anthony Davis chose to push for a trade there. Kyle Kuzma, early in his career, chose to re-sign there. Players gravitate toward the purple and gold because it means something. Because the brand carries weight. Because playing in Los Angeles, in that building, under those championship banners, it matters to people. And for Jonathan Kuminga, who grew up in Africa watching NBA games on a phone screen or a tiny television, who dreamed of one day being in the league, who has fought for everything he has, the idea of being a Laker might mean more than just basketball. It might mean a rival. In the deepest sense of that word. Chapter 11. The Darvin Ham Dimension. Now I want to talk about something that doesn't always come up in these trade conversations, but absolutely should. Coaching. One of the legitimate critiques of Jonathan Kuminga's time in Golden State, one of the things that his camp and people close to him have mentioned, at least obliquely, is that his development didn't always feel prioritized. There were moments where he seemed to disappear from the rotation for stretches that were hard to explain. There were games where he'd have a breakout performance and then get his minutes cut in the next game without obvious reason. Steve Kerr is a great coach. The Warriors system is one of the best offensive systems in NBA history. I'm not here to knock him. But for a young player who's still figuring out his game, who needs the confidence of consistent minutes, who needs to know his role is secure even when he makes mistakes, the Warriors' environment may not have been the ideal fit. The Lakers, whoever they put on that sideline, have an opportunity to make a different kind of pitch to Kuminga. They can say, you are going to be our guy. Not our second option in the front court. Not the young player we rotate in and out depending on the opponent. You are a cornerstone. You are going to play through your mistakes, and we're going to build around your strengths. That pitch, if they make it convincingly and actually follow through on it, could be incredibly powerful. Because Kuminga isn't just shopping for a contract. He's shopping for a situation. He's looking for the place where he's going to become the player he knows he can be. Chapter 12. The Financial Mathematics. Okay, let's get into the actual numbers for a second, because this is where a lot of people get confused and it's worth clearing up. In the NBA, trades have to be structured around salary matching. You can't just trade a guy who makes $20 million for a guy who makes $5 million without other pieces involved. Because the league has rules designed to prevent teams from circumventing the salary cap through trades. The general rule is that the salaries in a trade have to be within a certain percentage of each other. The specifics depend on where a team is relative to the salary cap and the luxury tax, but the basic principle is matching. So when the Lakers look at acquiring Kuminga, they need to figure out what outgoing salary they can attach that makes the math work. And that's where things get tricky. The Lakers have players on their roster who make various amounts. They have some flexibility, but they don't have a mountain of flexibility. This is actually part of why Kuminga's willingness to take less money is such a game changer. For the Lakers specifically, if he were demanding the full max, which in the range of the max extension for a player like him would be enormous, it might make the trade construct almost impossible because the incoming salary would be too high and the Lakers wouldn't have enough matching outgoing pieces. But if he's willing to come in on a more team-friendly deal, let's say something in the range that makes the math work with the pieces the Lakers have, then suddenly you can start to see how a deal actually gets assembled. Pair a couple of Lakers contracts together. Add a draft pick or two. Add a young player as the sweetener. And you've got a package that Golden State might actually take seriously. The exact numbers are still in flux. The negotiations are ongoing. But the financial pathway exists, and that's what matters at this stage. Chapter 13. The Warriors Rebuild Reality. Let's talk about something real for a minute. Golden State is in the middle of figuring out what comes after the dynasty. The Steph Curry years, the 4 championships, the record-setting regular seasons, the revolution in how the sport was played with spacing and movement and three-point shooting. That era is winding down. Not because Steph is bad. He's still Steph. He can still be among the best players in the league on any given night. But the window for championships is narrowing. The team around him has aged. Draymond Green is older. Klay Thompson is gone. The depth that made those championship teams so formidable isn't there anymore in the same way. And the Warriors' ownership has a decision to make. Do you try to squeeze one more run at contention with Steph? Or do you start building for the next chapter? If they're building for the next chapter, then holding on to Kuminga, an unhappy Kuminga who doesn't want to be there, remember, makes very little sense. Because a player who feels trapped and undervalued and is in a contractual standoff with management doesn't become a cornerstone of your rebuild. He becomes a problem. The cleaner move, the more businesslike move, is to trade him while his value is still sky high. While teams like the Lakers are willing to give up real assets. While the leverage still belongs to Golden State in the negotiation. Wait too long, and you risk getting nothing. He becomes a restricted free agent. Someone makes him an offer you don't want to match, and you're stuck either writing a check for a player you've alienated or watching him walk for nothing. Neither of those outcomes is good. The time to move is now. And everyone in the Warriors front office knows it. Chapter 14. The LeBron Factor. I can't do a video about the Lakers without talking about LeBron James. Even if his future is uncertain. Even if there are question marks about how many more years he's going to play. Here's the reality. LeBron James, even at this stage of his career, is still a gravitational force. When he talks, players listen. When he recruits, players come. When he endorses a situation, it carries more weight than almost anything a front office can say. And if LeBron James is in Jonathan Kuminga's ear, either directly or through the mutual respect that exists across the league, telling him that Los Angeles is the right place, that the pieces are there, that the opportunity is real. That's powerful. We've seen what happens when LeBron is invested in building something in Los Angeles. We saw the AD trade. We saw the championship in 2020. We know what it looks like when the organization is aligned and LeBron is pulling in the same direction. Now, there are real questions about LeBron's future with the Lakers. And if he's leaving, that changes the Kuminga calculus somewhat, because part of the pitch would be playing alongside one of the greatest players of all time. But even without LeBron, even if this is a post-LeBron Lakers era we're heading into, Anthony Davis is still there. And playing beside Anthony Davis is its own enormous incentive. Davis is one of the most dominant players in basketball when he's healthy. He makes everything easier for the players around him. He commands double teams that create open shots. He protects the rim so aggressively that the entire defensive structure of the team shifts. Kuminga and Davis together on the same team would be terrifying. Think about it. Davis anchoring the paint. Kuminga flying around the perimeter and attacking from the wing. You'd need two players just to handle those two guys. The basketball case for Kuminga as a Laker isn't just good. It's almost obvious. Chapter 15. The Dark Horse Teams. I want to spend a little time on the teams that aren't getting as much attention in this conversation but shouldn't be dismissed. Let's start with the San Antonio Spurs. Now, the Spurs aren't usually talked about as a Kuminga destination because they're a young team rebuilding around Victor Wembanyama and they're not trying to rush into contention. But think about this from a different angle. Wembanyama is already one of the best players in the league. He's going to be in San Antonio for a very long time. And the Spurs, even in rebuild mode, have the assets and the cap flexibility to make a legitimate run at a player like Kuminga. More importantly, the Spurs have a culture. A developmental culture that Greg Popovich built over decades, and now whoever continues that legacy is trying to maintain. A culture where young players become better than anyone thought possible because of the attention to detail, the system, the coaching. For a player like Kuminga, who wants a situation where his development is prioritized, where he's going to be played through mistakes and given consistent minutes, San Antonio actually checks a lot of those boxes. Could Wembanyama and Kuminga on the same team become one of the most electrifying young duos in the league? Absolutely. That's a front-page story for years to come. Then there's the New Orleans Pelicans. Wait, hear me out. The Pelicans have been a team in flux, but they have young pieces, they have cap space in certain scenarios, and they have a history of building around athletic bigs and wings. Zion Williamson and Kuminga would be an absolutely monstrous combination in the paint. The spacing would be an issue, but the sheer physical dominance of those two together? And don't sleep on the Oklahoma City Thunder. OKC has been one of the best-run organizations in the NBA for years. Sam Presti is one of the best executives in the league. They have tons of assets. They have draft picks coming out of their ears. If they decide Kuminga is the right piece to add to their young, ascending core, they could put together a package that makes Golden State's eyes light up. The Lakers have to know all of this. They have to know they're not the only ones at the table. And they have to move accordingly. Chapter 16. What Kuminga wants. Let's humanize this for a second. Let's step back from the trade packages and the salary cap, numbers and the front office machinations, and let's talk about what Jonathan Kuminga actually wants. He wants to feel valued. That's it. At the core of all of this, underneath all the business and the basketball and the negotiations, he wants to be somewhere where he feels like the most important people in the building believe in him. He came from a place where nothing was guaranteed, where the path from a small territory in Central Africa to the NBA wasn't a path that many people walk. He overcame language barriers, cultural barriers, the sheer logistical challenge of transplanting himself to a country he didn't grow up in and competing against players who'd been in elite development systems since they were 12 years old. He did all of that, and he made it. And now he's in the NBA, and he's talented, and he's young, and he's ascending, and he felt like the organization that was supposed to be his home didn't see that. Didn't fully commit to that. The money is real. The contract matters. But it's almost secondary to the feeling. If the Lakers, or whoever wins this sweepstakes, can make Jonathan Kuminga feel seen, feel believed in, feel like the cornerstone of something real and meaningful, that's the pitch that wins. That's the conversation that happens not in boardrooms, but maybe on a basketball court. Somewhere. Maybe in a gym during a private workout. Maybe in a one-on-one conversation between a star player and a young guy who's trying to figure out if he can trust the people who are asking him to come aboard. Those moments matter. In NBA free agency and trade negotiations, those human moments often matter more than any spreadsheet. Chapter 17. The timeline. Okay, let's talk about when all of this actually happens. The NBA calendar is specific. There are windows for things. Trades can happen during certain parts of the year. Free agency opens at a specific time. The trade deadline creates another window. The off-season has its own rhythm. Right now, the Lakers and Golden State are in conversation during a period where the front offices can talk to each other, can explore possibilities, can start building the framework of a potential deal. The actual execution, the official trade, would likely happen either in the off-season window or, if something changes, at the trade deadline during the season. But the urgency is now. Because if Golden State decides they're going to handle this by just going into the restricted free agency process, letting Kuminga get offers from other teams and then deciding whether to match, the Lakers lose their advantage. They'd have to make an offer as a free agent. Golden State could match it, and then you're in this limbo situation where Kuminga is on the Warriors, but clearly doesn't want to be. That's not what the Lakers want. That's not what Kuminga wants. A trade is the cleaner solution. It ends the situation decisively. Kuminga goes somewhere new. Golden State gets assets, everyone moves forward. So the window to make this happen as a trade is probably sooner rather than later. The Lakers know this. The Warriors know this. And the competing teams know this. It's moving fast. Chapter 18. The Agent Game. Let me tell you about something that most fans don't think about, but that shapes everything in these situations. Agents. Jonathan Kuminga's representation is a crucial factor here. His agents are the ones who are in daily communication with Golden State's front office, with the Lakers' front office, with the other teams that are interested. They're the ones who are carrying messages back and forth, who are setting expectations, who are managing the relationships that determine what ultimately happens. A skilled agent in this situation is doing a few things simultaneously. First, they're managing their clients' expectations, making sure Kuminga understands the timeline, understands what's realistic, understands that these processes take time even when everyone is moving urgently. Second, they're creating competition. Even if there's one team that Kuminga actually wants to go to, a good agent is making sure that there are multiple teams in the conversation, because competition drives the price up. If Golden State knows the Lakers are the only team willing to make a move, they'll squeeze every last asset out of them. But if Golden State thinks Miami is making a serious offer and Dallas is in the mix and there are a couple other teams lurking, now they have to make a decision, and that decision gets made faster and sometimes with better terms for the player. Third, they're threading the needle on the willing to take less piece. Because saying your client will take less money publicly is a delicate thing. You don't want to give away leverage unnecessarily. You want to make it known enough that it opens up trade possibilities, but not so publicly that every team lowballs you from the jump. The agent game is sophisticated. And in a situation this complex, with this many moving pieces, the representation matters enormously. Chapter 19. The Ripple Effects. Let's zoom out for a second and talk about what a Kuminga trade to the Lakers would mean. Not just for those two teams, but for the rest of the Western Conference. Because this doesn't happen in isolation. If the Lakers acquire Jonathan Kuminga, they become a different team. Not necessarily a championship team, we should be honest about that. There are still questions about depth, about the supporting cast, about whether the front office has truly built around AD and LeBron correctly. But they become a more dangerous team. A team that other contenders have to take seriously in a way they maybe didn't before. That affects how the Golden State Warriors rebuild. It affects how teams like Phoenix and Denver and Oklahoma City plan their own rosters. It affects who the Lakers target next in free agency, because Kuminga's presence changes what they need. And it affects what the Warriors can do with the assets they receive back. If the Lakers give Golden State a good young player plus draft picks, suddenly the Warriors have currency. They have chips to play. They can stay active in the league and rebuild faster than anyone expected, maybe. Every trade in the NBA is like dropping a stone in a pond. The ripples go out in all directions. And a Kuminga to Lakers trade would create ripples that the entire Western Conference would feel. Chapter 20. The Skeptics KCIVE been making the case for why this trade works, why it makes sense, why everyone has motivation to make it happen. But in the spirit of giving you the full picture, let me make the case against it. Let me give you the skeptics' argument. Skeptics will tell you that Kuminga is not as good as his hype suggests. That his best season, the 2023-24 campaign, happened in a system specifically designed to create open shots and easy buckets. That his efficiency numbers might not translate to a different environment. That his shooting inconsistency is a real concern, not a minor issue. That his decision-making limitations might be structural, not developmental. They'll point out that the Lakers have traded significant assets before for players who didn't pan out, that the organization has a history of making bold moves that looked great on paper and then didn't work out on the court. They'll raise the question of fit. Anthony Davis and Kuminga both want touches in the paint. Both want to attack downhill. Both need space to operate effectively. Is there enough space for two downhill players in the same offense without one of them getting squeezed? They'll mention the injury history. Kuminga missed time in 2024-25, and any injury history on a young player is worth noting even if it doesn't necessarily predict future problems. And they'll argue that the Warriors would be fools to trade him at a moment when his value might be slightly depressed. That they should either hold onto him through the restricted free agency process or wait until the trade market is more favorable. Those are all legitimate points. In the NBA, nothing is a sure thing. No trade is automatically a good idea. History is full of deals that looked obvious and obviously good and then fell apart for reasons nobody saw coming. But here's the counter to the skeptics. The floor on Jonathan Kuminga is still really, really high. Even in a worst-case scenario where he doesn't develop his three-point shot or he doesn't become the star people project, his athleticism, his defense, his ability to attack the rim, his age, all of that keeps his floor extremely high. He's not going to be a bust. The question is just how good he actually becomes. And the ceiling? The ceiling is all-star. The ceiling might be higher than that. Chapter 21. Voices from around the league. Let me take you inside some of the conversations that are happening around the league right now. Scouts who have watched Kuminga closely are using words like freakish and rare and the kind of physical package that you see maybe 3 or 4 times in a generation. They talk about his motor, his competitiveness, the fact that even in games where the shots weren't falling, he found ways to affect the outcome through energy and athleticism. Former players who've been in the league and seen a lot of young talent are comparing him. Carefully, not recklessly, because they know how comparisons can be misleading to players like Giannis Antetokounmpo in terms of the physical trajectory. Not the skill level yet. Not the production yet. But the physical ceiling. The sense that this is a body and an athleticism that can become almost anything with the right development. People who've been in rooms with Kuminga describe him as coachable, hungry, someone who takes instruction seriously and wants to improve. That's not a universal thing. There are talented players in this league who are not like that, who resist coaching, who have an entitlement that limits their development. Kuminga, by multiple accounts, is not that guy. He's hungry. And hungry players with his tools in the right system can become terrifying. Chapter 22. The AD Partnership. I want to spend more time on what Kuminga and Anthony Davis could look like together, because I think this is the part of the story that gets undersold. Anthony Davis is one of the most uniquely skilled players in NBA history. The combination of his size, his skill, his shooting range, his shot blocking, his defensive instincts, it doesn't really have a historical parallel that maps perfectly. He's 7 feet, moves like a guard, can shoot from the perimeter, can post up, can be your center or your power forward, and when he's engaged on defense, he might be the most disruptive player in the entire league. The challenge with building around AD has always been, what do you put around him? What are the pieces that make him most effective? The answers, historically, have been shooters, playmakers, and athletes who can operate in the spaces he creates. Kuminga brings the third category in an extraordinary way. When Davis draws a double team, which he will, because everyone double teams Anthony Davis, there needs to be a player who can make the defense pay, who can attack the closeout, who can get to the rim, who can make the split decision in half a second. Kuminga can do that. He's been doing that version of basketball his whole career, making quick decisions in space, attacking when the defense gives him a lane, converting with his athleticism. And defensively, putting Davis and Kuminga on the same team creates a matchup nightmare for opposing offenses. Two long, athletic, switchable players who can collectively guard the 1 through the 5. That's an absurd defensive foundation. The Lakers have had defensive identity under AD in the past. They could have it again with this combination. Chapter 23. The Moment of Decision. Here's where we are right now. The pieces are on the board. The players are in position. The conversations are happening. The pressure is building. The Lakers have to decide, how badly do we want Jonathan Kuminga, and what are we actually willing to give up? Golden State has to decide, do we pull the trigger now, or do we play this out and see if a better offer materializes? Kuminga has to decide, if the Lakers come in with a real offer and a real vision, is that the place? Or is there another team that makes more sense? And the competing teams have to decide, do we push harder, or do we step back and let the Lakers have this one? These decisions don't happen on a timeline that fans can see. They happen in phone calls at 10 at night, in text messages between front office executives, in meetings that get scheduled and canceled and rescheduled, in conversations between a player and his agent that are deeply private, deeply personal. But the outcome of those decisions, that we will see, that will show up in the transaction wire, in the press releases, in the press conferences where a player stands at a podium in a new jersey and talks about being excited for the next chapter. We're days or weeks away from that. Possibly hours. Chapter 24. The Historical Weight. Let me give you some historical context, because context is everything. The Lakers have drafted or acquired franchise-altering young talents throughout their history. Jerry West, Kareem Abdul-Jabbar, Magic Johnson, James Worthy, Shaquille O'Neal, Kobe Bryant, Andrew Bynum, who never reached his ceiling, Pau Gasol, LeBron James, Anthony Davis. Some of those acquisitions look prescient in hindsight. Some of them are the reason the franchise has 17 championships. Some of them changed the sport. But in between those highlights, there have also been misses. There have been players who came and didn't work out. Trades that looked great and fell flat. Investments in talent that didn't pan out. The Lakers are not perfect. No franchise is. But the ones that worked, the Shaq trade, the Pau trade, the LeBron signing, the AD trade, all of them share something in common. Someone inside that organization had the conviction to say, this player is worth the risk, and then went and got him, even when it was expensive, even when it was complicated, even when there were legitimate reasons to hesitate. A Jonathan Kuminga trade would be in that lineage if it happens. It would be the Lakers making a bet on young talent, on physical gifts, on potential, and going all in. That's what Lakers fans love about their team when they're at their best. That willingness to go get it. Chapter 25. What success looks like. Let me paint you a picture. It's 2 years from now. The Lakers have Jonathan Kuminga. He's 24. He's played 2 full seasons in the Los Angeles system with consistent minutes and a coaching staff that believed in him from day one. His three-point shooting has ticked up to 37-38%. Not elite, but reliable. Enough that defenses have to respect it. His decision-making has improved because he's in a system that makes reads simpler, that runs more motion and creates more natural opportunities, rather than asking him to create everything himself. He's averaging 23 points, 9 rebounds, 4 assists. He's guarding the opponent's best player most nights. He's made an all-star team. He's the guy Anthony Davis passes it to when he comes off a double team. The raw material for that story exists right now in Jonathan Kuminga's body, his work ethic, his hunger, his 22-year-old potential. The question is whether the Lakers, or whoever gets him, creates the environment where that story unfolds. Chapter 26. The Golden State Goodbye. I want to acknowledge something. If this trade happens, it's a meaningful moment for Golden State too. Not just as a business transaction, but as a genuine ending of something. The Warriors' dynasty was built on continuity. Steph, Clay, Draymond, core guys who stuck together through everything. That continuity was the foundation of everything they achieved. Kuminga was supposed to be the bridge to the next era. The next Steph in terms of being the core piece that stays through the transition and becomes the new face. That's not happening now. And there's something genuinely bittersweet about that. Not for the front office, they'll make their decisions based on business and basketball. But for the fans. For the people who watched Kuminga play in Oracle Arena and then Chase Center and got excited about what he could become in that uniform. He's going somewhere else. And wherever he goes, he's going to prove that the excitement was warranted. He's going to become great. And some Golden State fans are going to watch that happen and feel the particular sadness of watching someone who could have been yours flourish somewhere else. That feeling is part of sports. It's part of the beauty and the heartbreak of rooting for teams and players who are ultimately just humans making decisions about where to spend their lives and careers. Kuminga chose himself. He chose his future. And you can't be mad at him for that. Chapter 27. The competition escalates. New information is coming in. And it changes things. The competition for Kuminga isn't softening. It's getting more intense. Teams that were casually interested are becoming seriously interested. Calls that were exploratory are becoming substantive. The circle around this situation is tightening, and the Lakers can feel it. There's a sense among people who are close to these negotiations that the next 72 hours are critical. That decisions are going to be made in that window that determine whether a deal gets done before free agency, during free agency, or whether it slides into a different timeline entirely. 72 hours. The Lakers front office is working overtime right now. Pelinka and his team are running the numbers, calling their contacts around the league, feeling out what Golden State really needs, figuring out which of their own players might work in a trade. And the Warriors are doing the same on their end, running the offers they've received through their internal evaluation process, figuring out if any of them are good enough, deciding whether to be patient or whether to act. It's the NBA at its most intense. The intersection of business and basketball and human desire and organizational strategy all happening simultaneously, all pointing toward a single moment. When someone picks up the phone and says, "Okay, let's do this." Chapter 28. The Lakers pitch. Here's what I believe the Lakers pitch to Jonathan Kuminga looks like. They don't lead with money. The money is understood. They've done the work to structure something that's fair, something that recognizes his value while also being realistic about what the team can afford while still building a winner. They lead with vision. They sit Kuminga down, or his agent, or both, and they show him a picture of what the Lakers are building. Anthony Davis as the centerpiece. A team around him built for defense and transition and open court basketball. A city that eats, sleeps, and breathes the Lakers. A media market that will make him a star in a way that extends beyond basketball into the culture, into business, into everything else. And then they say, you're not coming here to be the sixth piece of this puzzle. You're coming here to be one of the top two guys. You and AD. Together. For the next 5, 6, 7 years. That's the pitch. And if Kuminga believes it, if the body language of Rob Pelinka and the coaching staff and maybe Anthony Davis himself tells him this is real, this is genuine, then the Lakers have a real shot. The pitch doesn't close the deal by itself. But it opens the door. And once that door is open, everything else is just details. Chapter 29. The last 24 hours. Let me take you to the moment. Imagine it's the evening. Somewhere in a hotel or a team facility or someone's home, two front office executives are on a call. The broad strokes of a deal have been agreed upon. The assets have been identified. The salary matching works. Now it's just final details. Language in contracts. The specific structure of draft pick protections. A player's consent, because players have to consent to trades in certain situations, and everyone has to make sure that consent is in place. The lawyers get involved. The league has to be notified. The paperwork starts to flow. And somewhere else in the city, Jonathan Kuminga is waiting. His phone is on. His agent has been texting him updates throughout the day. He knows it's close. He might be in a gym, shooting free throws, doing what athletes do when they're anxious. Going back to the thing that's most familiar, the thing that feels most like home. The rhythm of a basketball on hardwood. The arc of a shot. The sound of the net. And when the call comes, when his agent calls and says, it's done, you're a Laker, or it's done, you're a Heat player, or wherever he ends up, in that moment, all of the business falls away. He's just a kid from the Democratic Republic of Congo, standing in a gym somewhere, holding his phone. And everything he dreamed about when he was watching NBA games on a tiny screen in Central Africa is one step closer to complete. Chapter 30. The Final Reckoning. Here's what I want you to take away from all of this. The Jonathan Kuminga trade situation isn't just another NBA transaction. It's a story about a young man finding his worth, about organizations navigating the tension between loyalty and business, about the relentless churn of the best basketball league in the world. The Lakers want him. They want him badly. And the fact that he's willing to take less money to make a trade possible tells you everything you need to know about how motivated this player is to find a new home and a new beginning. The competition is real. The other teams aren't going away. And the Warriors aren't going to just hand him over without getting something meaningful in return. But the conditions are right. The motivation is there on all sides. The basketball fit is undeniable. The financial pathway exists. And at the end of this, whether it's days from now or weeks from now, Jonathan Kuminga is going to be playing basketball for a new team. I believe that with a high degree of confidence. The question is just which jersey he's wearing. If it's the Lakers, watch out. Because a 22-year-old with that kind of physical profile, with that kind of hunger, with that much to prove, playing alongside Anthony Davis in Los Angeles, with championship banners above his head every night, with the pressure and the spotlight and the history of that franchise pushing him to be more than he's ever been, that player could be something truly special. We might be watching the early moments of a story that people are going to be talking about for a very long time. And you were here at the beginning of it. Don't forget to hit subscribe, because when this trade actually drops, and it's coming soon, you're going to want to be here for the breakdown, for the analysis of what it means for the Deep dive into how the deal got constructed, for the real talk about what this Lakers team looks like now. This story isn't over. It's just getting started.